All right, we are here today to talk about March Madness, the NCAA tournament, 64 teams, well, 68 if you include the play-in games, all for this right here, the national championship on April 5th. I'm going to make my picks right here with you, tell you who I think is going to be good, some potential upsets, some teams that can maybe make deep runs. But yeah, we're gonna go into it. So let's just get right into it. Here is a printed bracket right here. If you've not seen it, here it is. I hope you can read the text on here. I'm gonna talk about each game, or at least each team. I'm gonna tell you who's in the matchup. So first, we're going to pick these 4 games up here. Look at these playing games. For some of them, I don't know more or that much, but Norfolk State, I guess we'll go with them. Wichita State, I think they've had a pretty good season. I think Drake's had a good season too. They were in the top 25 for a bit, but Wichita State, I think they're in a little bit tougher of a conference, having Houston in their conference down here. So I'm going to go with Wichita State. Plus, they've had tournament runs before, so I think they've got a shot there. For this game, let's go Texas Southern. Michigan State, UCLA. That's an interesting one right there. 2 teams that usually are pretty good programs. That Michigan State had a down year, still was able to make the tournament with a not so great record. But they got the tournament experience as of recent. Tom Izzo's a great coach, so I'm going to go ahead and put them in. I think UCLA's got a really good chance, but I'm going to go ahead and put Michigan State in there. So let's get into the big bracket. Gonzaga versus who I have Norfolk State. I don't think it matters. No questions asked here. Gonzaga. All right, so next we have Oklahoma against Missouri. Oklahoma, up and down year. Started off the year, they were all right, but, later on in the year, they had a big hot streak where they beat a couple top 5 opponents, top 10 opponents. Texas on the road. They beat Kansas. They beat, West Virginia. So they had a really hot streak, but at the end of the year, it all fell apart. They lost at home to Texas. They got swept by OSU. They had a horrific loss to Kansas State, one of the worst teams in the Big 12, and it all fell apart, and they went from a potential, 3 or 4 seed to an 8 seed, and then they won their play-in game in the Big 12 tournament, and they lost to Kansas in the first or second round, whatever they call it. Missouri was in the top 25 for a bit, fell out, and I can't remember what they did in the SEC tournament, but they are obviously a 9 seed. I'm going to go with OU on this one. I think they've got a good team, and I think if they play to the best of their abilities, they're a really good team. Next up is Creighton versus UCSB. This is an interesting one because Creighton, they've been a little cold recently. They got blown out in their conference championship game against Georgetown. They got 8 losses on the season. They were in the top 25 for most of the season. But the 5-12, that's always an upset right there. That kind of matchup, the 5-12 is usually an upset. It can be chaotic. So I think UCSB, they have a really good shot, but I am going to give this one to Creighton. I think they win this game. I think they make it to the round of 32. Virginia, Ohio, Virginia, they ended up not playing in their conference semifinals because of COVID, so they ended up not even having a shot to make it to their conference championship. Because of that, the best team in their conference all year, in my opinion. I don't think there's a question here. I think Virginia wins it. The crazier things have happened to Virginia. We all know about them being the 1 seed, losing to UMBC in the first round, but I think they make it. USC versus Wichita State. This is an interesting one. I picked Wichita State. Even if Drake makes it, I think that could be a potential upset. I'm very, very tempted to make this pick, but I could see it happening. I'm going to go with USC, but I'm not confident in that pick. I really do think Wichita State or Drake, whoever wins that game, has a great shot of beating USC, but I'm going to give it to USC. Kansas, Eastern Washington, Kansas, they've picked it back up the second half of conference play. Eliminated from the Big 12 just like Virginia with COVID issues. But, they've had a good second half of the Big 12 season. They beat Baylor. I think that was a big win for them. I think they get that win. Oregon VCU, that's an interesting one. VCU, back when they had Shaka Smart as their coach, they made it to the Final Four. Oregon's made some runs before. But it's going to be a tough one right here, in my opinion. I'm not too sure on who I'm going to pick here. I think it could go either way, but let's go with VCU. I think Oregon, obviously I think they got a shot, but Oregon. Iowa, we'll talk about them a little bit later, but they win this game. I don't see them, unless they just go cold, losing that. But Iowa there. Michigan here, Texas Southern, Michigan. Michigan's going to win that baby. LSU Saint Bonaventure. I probably pronounced that wrong. LSU's hot right now. They made it to the SEC championship game. They beat Arkansas. They look really good. They almost beat Alabama. But LSU's a really strong team right now. And I think they win this game, and I think they can put up a fight against Michigan. We'll talk about that in a minute. Colorado versus Georgetown. Georgetown, they're hot right now. They've got themselves some wins. They've got their conference championship. Colorado lost in their conference championship to Oregon State. They are a 5 seed. This is the 5-12 upset I was talking about earlier. I think it happens here. Give it to Georgetown. We're just going to put George there. But yeah. Next up, Florida State, UNC Greensboro. I'm going to go with FSU. I think Florida State wins it. BYU, Michigan State, UCLA. I think this could go to either one of these three teams. I picked Michigan State, and they got that tournament experience. They got a really good head coach. So I think they've got a really good shot at making a run here. But BYU looked really good in their conference championship against Gonzaga. I think they had a 10-point halftime lead. They ended up losing by 10 or something, but they looked really good in that game. Gonzaga's looked pretty invincible, so for that, I got to give that to BYU. That was a pretty impressive game. But, yeah, let's see. Texas Abilene Christian. This one's interesting because, you see 3-14. Those upsets have happened, and I'm a Texas fan, but I don't want to give that to them easy. Abilene Christian, they've had a really good year, 23-4. They almost beat Texas Tech and Lubbock. That's the main reason that I think this could be a potential upset. Texas, when they were on there a little bit of a slump, all their losses are to ranked opponents, I believe. Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, Baylor, Texas Tech, Villanova, just to name a few. But Abilene Christian, they almost beat Texas Tech and Lubbock. And, Texas lost to Texas Tech twice in the season. And so I think that this could, if Texas starts to do too much and they keep shooting more threes than they should, I think this could be a potential upset. But I am going to give it to Texas. I think Texas, they're really hot right now. They've got 3 ranked wins in their past 6 games, a 5-game win streak. I'm just going to give that to Texas. Uconn, Maryland. Uconn's made some deep tournament runs in the past. They've won some national championships. I think they won a national championship as like a 7 or 8 seed before. And then Maryland's in there as well, but I'm going to give this one to Uconn. Bama, Iona, Rick Pitino versus Alabama. Bama's having too hot of a season. I'm going to go with Alabama. Now to the other side of the bracket. We are now over here. We are over here on this side of the bracket. Baylor versus Hartford. No question, Baylor. North Carolina, Wisconsin. 2 teams that, are usually really good. They're usually higher seeds. Have had down years. But, they've got some good wins. North Carolina, I believe, they beat Florida State a couple weeks ago. Wisconsin, I can't remember who they beat. I think they beat Iowa, maybe? I don't know. But I'm going to give this one to UNC. Villanova, Winthrop. Here's another 5-12 that's got potential upset worthiness. I guess that's the words for it. Villanova, I think one of their top players is hurt right now. They've been on a cold streak. They've lost a lot of games recently. At one point, they were number 3 in the country with only 1 or 2 losses. They now have 6 losses. They lost in the first round of their conference tournament. It's been a rough few weeks for this team. Winthrop is 23-1. I think we get a 5-12 upset here. I did not pick the 5-12 upset with the Big East team over here. I picked Creighton to win that. but I think it happens over here. I think Winthrop gets the win. Purdue, North Texas. North Texas, Cacaw versus Purdue, the Boilermakers. This is tough because I'm from the area that North Texas is in. And, the biased part of me really wants to pick North Texas. I think North Texas has a shot, but, oh, man, I don't know. I'm gonna go with Purdue. I'm going to go with my head. But if North Texas wins that, I'll be really happy. Texas Tech versus Utah State. I think that's going to be a really good game. But Chris Beard, he's been here before. He's led Texas Tech to the NCAA championship game before. They've got tournament experience. It's a different team than that championship team 2 years ago, but I think Chris Beard's an incredible coach. I don't see Tech losing that one, but I do think it should be a good game. Arkansas, Colgate. Colgate only one loss on the season to Army, I believe. And then Arkansas, obviously a great season for them. They rose through the ranks, ended up being a 3 seed. I got Arkansas on that. Virginia Tech versus Florida. I think this is going to be a good matchup right here. Ups and downs for both these teams this season, but I'm going to give it to Virginia. Virginia Tech. Ohio State, Oral Roberts, Ohio State. I don't see problems for Ohio State there. Illinois, Drexel. I don't see Illinois having any problems. Loyola, Chicago, Georgia Tech. This is a tough one, I'll admit. A couple of years ago, Loyola, Chicago made that deep run. They made the Final Four. So they've been there before. They've had another good year. They're an 8 seed, but Georgia Tech is hot right now. They just won the ACC. They just beat Florida State, who's currently a 4 seed. Georgia Tech's hot. I'm going to have to go with the hot hand. I'm going to go with Georgia Tech. Tennessee, Oregon State. This is another potential 5-12 upset. Oregon State hot right now. Just won the Pac-12. Tennessee, they've been a little cold recently, but they almost beat Alabama. I think this is another high possibility. I think all 4 5-12s could potentially go to the 12, but I am going to give it to Tennessee. Oklahoma State, I think they're one of the most underrated teams in this bracket. The fact that they're a 4 seed, I think, is disrespectful. I think they've been disrespected all year. They were on the outside of the top 25 for so long. They had so many quality wins. They'd come so close to beating some really good teams, but they were left outside the top 25. And it hasn't been until these past 2 or 3 weeks that people have started to recognize them as a really good team. Cade Cunningham, obviously a potential lottery pick in the NBA. Obviously him, but I think that whole team is really good. They've had a great run here recently, beating Baylor. They beat Kansas this year, I think. They swept Texas Tech. They beat Arkansas, who's a 3 seed. They beat Texas, who's a 3 seed. But they went from being projected to be a 2 after they beat Baylor to falling to a 4. I think that's going to fuel them a bit. I think Oklahoma State wins this game easily. I don't want to say easily, but I think they win this game. I think they've got a fire lit under them, and I think they're going to win that. Syracuse, San Diego State. San Diego State, I believe they won. What are they in the Mountain West? I think, but they won their conference over Utah State. Syracuse, they've got a great coach, and I'm blanking on his name, Boeheim, I think. But yeah, they've had a pretty decent season. They've got a couple big wins, I think, but I'm gonna go ahead. This is tough, but I'm going to give it to Syracuse. Syracuse, the history there in that program. West Virginia, Morehead State. Don't want to overlook Morehead State, but I think West Virginia gets this done. Clemson, Rutgers. That's going to be a close one. Clemson, they were up in the top 10 early in the year, but they fell off in the middle of their conference play, late in their conference play. But I do believe that they come back. They win a tournament game over Rutgers. And then finally, Houston's going to win against Cleveland State, no problem. So there is your round of 32. I have no idea how long this video has been going on now, but there's your round of 32. On to the Sweet 16. Who makes the Sweet 16? I tell you what, with all 4 1-8s or 1-9s, I could see an upset happening in all 4. The one that I'm most confident in, the one seed that I'm most confident in their matchup is Gonzaga. OU is a really, really good team. They've won against some really good teams. They played in the Big 12, which was a very tough conference this year. But Gonzaga's looked unstoppable this year. They've yet to slip up. I don't see them slipping up against Oklahoma. I think Gonzaga wins that. But as for the other ones, Baylor, UNC we'll go to later. Illinois, Georgia Tech, Michigan, LSU we'll talk about later. Creighton, Virginia, I'm going to give this to Virginia. I think Virginia is a little bit better right now. But yeah, I think Virginia's going to make it to the Sweet 16. USC, Kansas. Kansas is hot right now. Bill Self's an incredible coach. I think Kansas gets it. Iowa, VCU. I tell you what about Iowa. Iowa has been really lucky this year with the way they've been ranked. Iowa got swept by Indiana in the regular season, who was not good at all. I think they lost to Minnesota. So Iowa, they have lost to some teams that they should not have lost to, and that does concern me. They've been helped out tremendously by the rankings. I think 1 week, like they lost to Indiana or something at home, and they didn't get hit in the rankings that bad. They're a highly ranked team right now, but I could see them potentially getting upset early. I think VCU's got a shot. If Iowa goes cold, they're an offensive team, they could lose, but I will give this to Iowa. I think they make it. But they are there's a heavy chance that they get beat there. Michigan, LSU. Once again, LSU very hot right now. They almost won the SEC. They were just one shot short. I think they've got a great shot in this game. Michigan's been really good all year, though. It's hard to doubt Michigan. Michigan's just been so good in the Big Ten. They've played great teams. They beat some great teams. It's going to be tough. I think it'll be a really close game, but I'm going to give it to Michigan. Next up is Georgetown, Florida State. Florida State lost in their conference championship. Georgetown, they won their conference championship. Georgetown, every year I feel like a double-digit team makes a run. I think this year, I think it's going to be Georgetown making that run. I think Georgetown pulls off the upset twice in a row, beating Florida State. BYU, Texas. Once again, BYU had that really strong conference championship game. They've had a really good season. In football, BYU's provided some problems to Texas, which concerns me as a Texas fan. But Texas, they played such a tough schedule all year. I think that's going to pay off for them. They're a tough team. They're a physical team. I think Texas gets this done. Next up, Uconn versus Alabama. I think Alabama wins this. I really do. I think Bama's a really good team. I think they've got it going on right now. I think Alabama wins it. Baylor UNC is a really interesting matchup because Baylor has been one of the hottest teams this year prior to their COVID. Past COVID, after they came back from that, they have been a little bit cold. They've got 2 losses in that span, one to Kansas, one to Oklahoma State. They've had some close calls against Iowa State, West Virginia, but I think they sneak out a win here. UNC, I think, will give them a run for their money. I think just like this Michigan-LSU game, it'll be a really close game, but I do think Baylor wins it. Winthrop, Purdue, I think that's tough, but I'm going to give it to Purdue. Texas Tech, Arkansas. Texas Tech and Arkansas have a combined 3 losses to Oklahoma State. That's something they have in common. They both have losses to Oklahoma State. But Texas Tech, I think they're a really good team. I think they're an underrated team, underappreciated team. Arkansas has had a great season, but I think Tech edges Arkansas out. Virginia Tech, Ohio State, I don't see Ohio State having problems. Ohio State. Illinois, Georgia Tech, just like the Baylor UNC and the LSU Michigan game, I think this could be a really close game, a really fun game, but a really close one. A scare for Illinois, but I do think Illinois wins it. Let's see, Illinois. Oklahoma State, once again, I think they're a really good team. I'm gonna ride the Oklahoma State train. Oklahoma State beats Tennessee. Syracuse, West Virginia. West Virginia, I think, gets it done. Syracuse has got a shot, but I think West Virginia's got it in the bag there. Clemson, Houston, I'm going to give this one to Houston. Houston's been so good all year. I mean, it's tough to doubt them. But yeah, there's your Sweet 16. Gonzaga, Virginia, Kansas, Iowa, Michigan, Georgetown, Texas, Alabama, Baylor, Purdue, Texas Tech, Ohio State, Illinois, Oklahoma State, West Virginia, Houston. So we've got a 1, a 4, a 3, a 2, a 1, a 12, a 2, a 3. A pretty predictable bracket, I guess you could say, in terms of who makes it. I'm 99% sure that my bracket will be wrong after the round of 64. There's going to be some big upsets there. But, a double-digit team's going to make it into the Sweet 16, probably multiple. I'm probably going to be wrong on which one, but let's get into the Elite Eight. Gonzaga, they're too hot. They beat Virginia earlier this year. I don't see them losing it again, or losing this time. They didn't lose the first time, so I don't know why I'm saying this time, but you get it. Gonzaga wins. I think Kansas beats Iowa. I've had my concerns with Iowa, and I don't think they can beat Kansas. I think Kansas is going to outlast them. Kansas is going to be too good for them. Kansas beats Iowa to make it into the Elite Eight to get a rematch of Gonzaga and Kansas that we had earlier this year. Michigan, Georgetown. I think the Georgetown hot streak ends here. Give it to Michigan. Texas, Alabama. This is an interesting one. They've played each other recently. I think it was last year or 2 years ago they played each other. Different teams. They've both improved a ton as of recent, but I think Texas, with that Big 12 play, the Big 12 was so strong this year, I think that's going to help them out tremendously. I think Texas makes it to the Elite Eight. But over here, Baylor, Purdue, I'm going to give it to Baylor. Let's see. Ohio State, Texas Tech. I think Texas Tech will give them a run, but I think it's going to be Ohio State winning this. And then here's where I have a major upset happening. I have our first number 1 seed getting eliminated. I think Illinois, they've had a tremendous year. They've had a great season. But Oklahoma State's hot right now. They've got some big wins against some really good teams. They're underappreciated once again. Cade Cunningham, that whole team. I think Oklahoma State, that's right, Oklahoma State makes it to the Elite Eight, beating Illinois. West Virginia, Houston. This is a tough call for me because West Virginia's been really good this year. They've got some quality wins. But Houston, they've been pretty great too. They've got a big win over Texas Tech early in the season. It's such a tough call on this one. It really is a coin flip, but I'm going to go with the higher seed. I'm going to go with Houston. So there's your Elite Eight. Gonzaga, Kansas, Michigan, Texas, Baylor, Ohio State, Oklahoma State, and Houston. That is right. But this first matchup in the Elite Eight, Gonzaga, Kansas, a rematch of a game we saw earlier this year. I don't see Gonzaga slowing down. I think this could be a really good game, a really close game. I think Kansas, if they're hot, they've got a really good shot, but I've still yet to see anyone put up a good enough fight to beat Gonzaga. I'm going to give it to Gonzaga. Michigan, Texas, I think that's a really good matchup. I think both these teams have been really hot all year long. Not all year long, but they've been really hot at times. They've had really good seasons. They've had bounce-back seasons at times, it seems like. But they've both been in tough conferences, playing top 5, top 10 opponents, top 25 opponents all the time, every week. But I think Michigan edges out Texas here. Michigan, Juwan Howard, I think they win that game. Close one, but I do have Michigan winning it. So there are 2-year Final Fours. And then as for Baylor, Ohio State, this is a tough one. Baylor has been cold as of recent. If they don't pick it up, I think it's potential that Ohio State beats them, and I'm going to pick that. Why not? I think Ohio State, Baylor's had a great season. They have been hot all year, but after that COVID exposure, after they had those couple weeks off, they've been cold, and they really haven't picked it back up, in my opinion. They almost lost to Kansas State in the Big 12 tournament. They almost lost to Iowa State at home. They lost to Kansas and Oklahoma State, who are great teams, but they didn't look like themselves. They almost lost to West Virginia. Their best win since their return was against Texas Tech, and I think they only won that one by 10 or 11. So Baylor's still been cold ever since they've gotten back, but I think it ends up biting them in the Elite Eight, and I think Ohio State makes it to the championship. Not the championship 4, that's NASCAR, to the Final Four. Houston, Oklahoma State, I think that's going to be a really, really fun game. But I think we get the battle of the OSUs here. I think we get Oklahoma State in the Final Four, beating Houston, being the one representative for the Big 12 in the Final Four. I think it'll be a fun game. I think it could be a really good game, but I'm going to give it to Oklahoma State. So there is your Final Four. We have Gonzaga, Michigan, 2-1 seeds. Then we have the 2 seed of Ohio State versus the 4 seed of Oklahoma State. This is where it gets fun. I think this is going to be an amazing game. These two teams have been on top of it all year long. It's been a matchup that people have been wanting to see. And then this one is 2 teams. Oklahoma State, an underrated team who's been overlooked at times. Ohio State, who's been in the mix with Illinois, Michigan, Iowa for the Big Ten. They've kind of been overlooked in their conference at times. So I think it could be a really fun game. But here we go. Gonzaga, Michigan, 2-1 seeds. 2 teams that have been on fire all year. 26-0 versus 20-4. Once again, I have not seen them slow down. The first spot in the championship game, give it to Gonzaga. Second one, the OSUs, the battle of the OSUs, the one from Ohio, the one from Oklahoma. Who gets it done? I think this could be the game of the year. Maybe. Who knows? If it happens, it could be. It probably won't happen because I get a lot of things wrong. And, it's pretty impossible to get everything right in your bracket or even get the Final Four right. But I think Ohio State edges them out. I really do. I think Oklahoma State, once again, I think they're a really, really good team. But Ohio State will make it to the championship and play Gonzaga. Now, for our championship. Ohio State made the championship in football, and they got blown out by Alabama. Destroyed by Alabama. Their dreams, hopes and dreams and souls were all crushed by Alabama. They did not have to play Alabama in this championship. That is a point for them. Gonzaga, they have been here before. They've made so many Final Fours in the past few years, Elite Eights. They have made it deep runs in the tournament. Their head coach, Mark Few, he knows what it's like to be here, but they have not won this thing. The making it super far consistently in the tournament, that is a point, but they lose half a point because they have not won it yet. But Ohio State hasn't won either, so they lose half a point. So we're back at square one. We are even. This is a toss-up. I really do think this could be a really good game. But, once again, I have yet to see them get slowed down. I mean, I feel like every year's the year for this team. They're always a 1 seed. They always make it to the Elite Eight or Final Four. They always compete. They don't get blown out when they do lose in the tournament. I feel like every year's their year, so I feel like this isn't that unpredictable. But, yeah, I mean, one of these years, they're going to end up winning it. It's going to be the year I don't pick them. So, I mean, might as well. But, yeah, there's my bracket. Hope you like it. Tell me if you agree or disagree. I'm sure you guys all have your online brackets that you're doing with your friends, or you got print brackets like this one that you're posting on the Twitters and the Instagrams and the Snapchats, Facebooks. But, yeah, that's my bracket. I think we've got a lot of good games in the first round that could be potential upset worthy. But then going on down the line, if a couple matchups happen, I think they could be potential games of the year. But there is my bracket. As for a final score, I think it's going to be a high-scoring one, 84-77. There. And then, of course, just to make sure it's my bracket, I will sign it to make sure that this is officially mine. Woo. Yay. Bracket complete. There goes my pen. Hope you enjoyed this video. Get a good final look at this bracket because this is the last time that it will ever have potential of being right. As of Thursday, it will be wrong. I will probably miss like all 4 of the play-in games. But then, the first round, I don't know, dude. It's going to be rough. I'll give you updates round by round on how bad I'm doing. But, yeah, have a great rest of your day. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, leave a like. If you want to see more on the NCAA tournament, subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments. And, yeah, we can do that. We can do some live streams. We can do some videos. End of the day, after each day of the tournament, we can talk about on a live stream some of the biggest storylines, some of the biggest wins, some of the biggest upsets, some of the best games. But, yes, that will do it for me today.